I mean, this is a wonderful and beautiful thing that Paul is describing. Now, if you've grown up in charismatic Pentecostal circles, they always go to these two verses to describe prayer language, or, your prayer language, which bothers me just because that's not what it says. What it says is something quite the opposite. When words can't be uttered, they can't even be formed. I can barely groan that the Holy Spirit will take what is needed to be presented to the Father, not even necessarily in terms of words. I can communicate across the room and never say a word. I don't have to use words and communicate what I want to communicate. And he's saying that's what the Holy Spirit will do. He knows your heart. He knows the mind and the heart of the Father. And that's what he does for us. That's what Jesus experiences in the garden. An angel being sent to him. Because it says that the angel ministers to him and he was strengthened and he prayed more earnestly. The word earnestly in the Greek means to reach out. So he was able to reach out even further. Peter uses that word when he talks about loving one another fervently. He's saying, you think this love one another stuff is easy? There's going to be times where you're going to have to reach out even further, but the Holy Spirit will help you. Lastly, if we look at Luke's resurrection, I've kind of said it a few times already tonight, so I won't say it again. But for Luke has much more on his mind with the resurrection than the other writers do. He recognizes that the resurrection is what made way for the outpouring of the Spirit that he's going to write about in Acts. And it's interesting, if you read the end of Luke and you read the beginning of Acts, in Luke's mind there are two different letters that just go along together. So it's really like one long Luke gospel almost, really. But he sees something absolutely crucial in the resurrection and the ascension, which is the outpouring of the Spirit. Do you remember what Luke says in the beginning of, or remember what it says in the beginning of Luke, what the angel told Mary? The Holy Spirit will come upon you. At the end of Luke, when he's telling them to wait, because the Holy Spirit is going to be given to them. In the beginning of Acts, it says the Holy Spirit will come upon you. You can't, if they were two different writers, you'd say, oh, maybe they use the same terminology. When you get the same writer saying the same thing, he's trying to tell you something. That the same way as Jesus was birthed into this world, the Holy Spirit's going to come upon you, and you will be birthing something of the Spirit as well. The same way as Jesus was birthed and shared the Spirit and sent the Spirit, the same way you will go around birthing other people and sharing the Spirit in the same way. It's a very beautiful picture that Luke is picking up on. For Luke, like I've said throughout the evening, it's about the Spirit of God. Charles Price in his book, I'll just kind of end with this, because he says it really, really well. He says, what we do as Christians, it's like going into a bookshop and buying a book. And you've got all these chapters and all these words and all this stuff in this book. And then all we do is we go around talking about the book all the time that we bought. It was in this bookshop. And we paid $5 for it. And we go on, the guy who sold it to me. The shop is on 53rd Street. He goes on and on and on and on. And finally somebody says, well, what's in the book? So I don't know. And he said, it's a bit like that. The Holy Spirit is in each one of us. And we go on talking about things that really don't matter. The story that's in us, the story that's being told, that needs to be told, that's in us. Not reciting the Bible, but the story that's in us, that's just waiting to be opened up and be shared with others, is what he's saying. We have not become the people of the Spirit, and that was the whole point. We've missed the whole point. We've got caught up in other things about atonement and all kinds of stuff, but we've missed the fact that God's people are people of the Spirit. He breathed on them the Spirit on Easter Sunday night. He pours out His Spirit upon them because they need the Spirit upon them to go forward and be witnesses that the Spirit is in them. All this kind of stuff. So Luke, what we walk away with between Palm Sunday, between the garden and Easter, is the outpouring of the Spirit. That's what he's really on about. And John is going to take us even a step further. Personally, I think the difference between Luke and John goes further, but Luke leaves us in this place of you shall receive power. And the church is filled with a lot of power-hungry people. I know people, they've sat in this room and said to me, I just want the power. I almost get sick to my stomach because John is the one that sorted us out with that. where he said, but it's not about receiving power, it's about becoming sons. What God is doing is raising a family. That's what he's doing. Next weekend is Palm Sunday weekend, so we'll be in John for Palm Sunday. Again, it's out there. It's really quite unusual compared to the other three. But he's had 30 years to read theirs and then decide, this is what I'd like to say about Palm Sunday.